through the afternoon that we learn something new and learn to apply it to our lives. Help us to have a spirit-filled conversation. In Jesus Christ I pray, amen. You may be seated.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's AY program on the theme, the benefits of healthy eating and natural remedies that can be used for healing. We are truly delighted to have everyone here with us this afternoon, whether you are here with us physically or watching via our online platforms. We welcome you with open arms, also to anyone who may be visiting us for the first time. We welcome you to our AY program, and we look forward to having you again. We hope that today's program will enlighten each and every one of you, that we will all leave here feeling blessed. Again, I say welcome.
Could the congregation please stand for the AYA motto and pledge? The aim, the Advent message for the world and my generation. Motto, love of Christ compels. The pledge, loving the Lord Jesus, I promise to take an active part in the Advent, doing what I can to help others and to finish the work of the gospel. Song. Adventist youth are we from every land and sea. Together we pray and work and play in happy harmony. We have a faith to share with others everywhere. A message of love from God above to show the world we care. Adventist youth, Adventist youth, Adventist youth. Our opening song will be I've Got a Mansion Over the Hilltop. Satisfied with just a cottage below, a little silver and a little gold.
Did you know? Did you know eating leafy greens like spinach and kale boosts your immune system thanks to their high vitamin C and antioxidant content? Did you know that ginger is a powerful natural remedy that can help reduce inflammation and soothe digestive issues? Did you know a diet rich in whole foods like fruits, vegetables, and whole grains can reduce the risk of chronic diseases like heart disease and diabetes? Did you know that honey isn't just sweet? It has antibacterial properties. It has antibacterial properties that can help heal wounds and soothe sore throat naturally. And did you know that I'm finished?
Good afternoon, everyone. Dr. 𝘾𝙤𝙣𝙣𝙩 is a physician and addiction specialist who serves as the Dean of Pre-Medical Science at the Metropolitan University College of Medicine in Antigua. He is passionate about guiding future doctors and has a strong background in addiction treatment, having worked extensively with youths and families. Outside the classroom, Dr. Simon is a cricket enthusiast, a devoted husband and father, and a man of deep faith, always striving to serve with purpose, compassion, and integrity. Let us welcome him as he comes.
Good afternoon, everyone. Okay. And anytime I come to Old Road, I know I'm coming home, so thanks for the introduction. But I say when you come home, you don't really need introduction, right? When you go home to your family, you know, they don't already know who you are. And Old Road have a very special place in my heart. Some of you might know that my father was a fisherman, and this was one of the areas where we fished quite a lot. So my early formation had a lot to do with a lot of people from Old Road, both Adventists and non-Adventists, who took me under their wings. I must admit, sometimes when I drive through Old Road, I pull my glass up and drive fast if I don't want to be delayed. Because if I don't, somebody's going to stop me and find some kind of bananas or mango or something, you know. But it's all in good love, and thank God that we have people who are still giving and loving. And I must say that, you know, just the fresh air around here and the breeze is different from where you find anywhere else in Antigua. That's why I hope sometimes we can take off the AC and allow the fresh air to come in. It's good for our health. Now this afternoon I want to focus a little bit on mental health, and that's my main area of expertise in my professional work. My specialty is really addiction treatment, addiction diagnostic and treatment. And it's a huge problem in Antigua and in the world. Antigua is not unique in that regards. But what I find, especially among our young, but what I find as well is that we ignore the other aspects of mental health that can maybe give rise to things like an addiction. And so I want this afternoon to focus on a few pointers, maybe about 10 or so, that can help us to really guard our mental health. And I tend to do things from a biblical perspective because I think the Bible have all the answers that we need. And so as we go along, it's not anything that you're going to get maybe in a mental health textbook or a book that's written by a doctor from a university. It's something that we can find in our Bibles. And I really want us to be mindful of that. One of the things that sometimes I speak about in my own church in Liberta is that sometimes I'm a little peeved, and it's something I take dear to heart. And if anybody in here who's not Seventh-day Adventist, I hope you can understand where I'm coming from. But I'm very much mindful when anyone is invited to the church, especially in the divine worship time, whether it be Sabbath school in the morning or divine worship, to speak to the people of God. And the reason why I say that, and the reason why I'm thinking that, and I'm glad that, you know, maybe someone here can understand where I'm coming from. When we stand here, no matter what the service is, whether it be Divine Hour, Sabbath School, AY like it is this afternoon, Pathfinders, whatever it is, anytime you're making a presentation to God's people, you have to speak truth. And we have to be careful when someone comes to speak to us and they can't tell us that keeping the Sabbath day holy is something that helps your mental health. Okay? And it's not everyone who can tell you that mental health express can tell, because if you ask that question to them, they might tell you, nah, it's not that important. It doesn't matter. Or you can keep Sunday, or you can keep Thursday, or you can take a day off at some other point in time in the week. When the Bible tells us, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and that is one of the creation of God that really helps our mental health. The fact that you can pull yourself away from the world for one day, 24 hours, okay? Or some periods of that 24 hours. Come and fellowship with your brethren from church. Draw strength from each other. You know, don't have to worry about the price of macaroni on High Street. There's a macaroni on High Street, by the way. You don't have to worry about, you know, if somebody needs your expertise in your business. You know, just the fact that you just can come away and just praise God, connect with God, connect with your family, connect with the people who God have put on earth to strengthen you. Okay? That is something that guards our mental health. And the first thing I want to talk about this afternoon is, one, prioritizing physical foundations. First and foremost, sleep, rest. Normally I don't start any presentation with sleep. I usually end that way so nobody goes to sleep. But if you feel like sleeping right now, it's okay with me. Sleep is very important. Most of us in today's world don't get enough sleep. When in medical school they tell us, oh, you need 8 hours sleep and blah, 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 and doctors will tell people 8 hours sleep, I realized that when my children were born, and I don't know if to pick it up from my parents and grandparents, but I don't think, especially the girls, really sleep 8 hours, even when they were babies, okay, or small children. My daughter, I used to have to sometimes take in the bed, lie in the bed with her, put my arms over her, hold her down so she could fall asleep. And this is like sometime after midnight, when she was like 2 or 3 years old, okay? So, what has happened though? I realized that over time, our sleep patterns have changed. And one of the reasons why that it don't seem like we need as much rest now like we used to is because that this whole social media and phones and connection, internet connection and telephone connection and telecommunications means that we're never, ever out of connection with anyone. And as a result, our brains never lock off. And because our brains never lock off, we don't really rest as much. And it's a travesty. Because what is happening, a lot of the mental health problems that we're having, number one, a lot of the physical health problems that we're having are stemming from the lack of sleep. Anyone who works shift work like myself can tell you, we have higher risk for mental health conditions. That's why, for example, in the United States, doctors have the highest rates of suicide. The entire highest rates of suicides in the United States amongst doctors. Okay? Especially among doctors who deal with mental health issues, funny enough. We have higher, or people who work shift work have higher rates of diabetes, or higher risk of getting diabetes, higher risk of getting hypertension, higher risk of heart disease, higher risk of obesity. And I don't want to disparage any of our nurses, but maybe that's why you see a lot of obesity amongst our nurses. Shift work, as opposed to make you lose weight, make you gain weight, because at 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, when a nurse is on a shift, if that's the time she gets to eat, she's going to sit down and eat a big bowl of food, okay? Unfortunately. And that's why, as a healthcare worker, I guard my time very sacredly. I decided to get a job now that I'm not being on call anymore. I've done that for over 20 years, and at the point in time when I think I deserve a break from being on call. So anytime I get a job with anyone, anybody asks me to be a physician anywhere for anything, yes, people have my number, and yes, people call me at all sorts of hours, but I get a job that I don't necessarily have to respond, okay? If there's an emergency, there's always 911, okay? And I say that to say this, not to be mean or to be selfish, because I would want to know that there's somebody who can answer my children's call if they get sick at 2 in the morning, which is 911. However, I had to do that because there was a time when, for many years, maybe for 10 years or more, when I was medical director at Crossover Center, I was on call 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, how many days in the month, how many days in the year, for 10 years, okay? Or almost 10 years. Even the days when I was not on call, when I had another doctor taking the medical calls, I was still on call if certain things happened. And trust me, it is not easy. At one point, I just had to tell my wife, look here, whatever happens this month or next month or in the next months to come in terms of finances has to happen because I need to guard my mental health and my spiritual health as well. So guard your physical health in terms of your mental health. Make sure you're getting enough exercise, make sure you're sleeping, make sure you're balancing physical activity with sleep, and make sure that you're eating well. Yes? Very good question. She asked, what if you're close to the golden age? And by golden age, I think she means old people. Or seniors. Hey, I can say old people because I'm in the realm of old, okay? When you pass 50-year-old. Yes, many older people going to have difficulty sleeping, and they're probably going to need less sleep. The truth of the matter is, and that's why I don't like to tell people 8 hours and things like that. I love to tell people find your sleeping pattern, your sleeping rhythm. Try to develop it early in life, and try to follow it throughout your life. Because, take my parents for example. My father's a fisherman, had to get up like 3 o'clock in the morning. In summertime, I used to do that with him every weekday during the summer. Sometimes we get up 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock, sometimes earlier, depending on what we're doing. And as a result, I find myself not needing 8 hours of sleep during the night. I might get 2 hours in the afternoon. And I love when I was in Cuba, I used to have the afternoon siesta. That siesta was I thought it was created for me. Because it helped me to get some rest in the day, not knowing that I'm not a person who normally sleeps 8 hours in the night. The important thing for older people or seniors is to recognize that, hey, you might not need as much sleep at that stage in your life. Because you don't have to get up, hopefully 24 to work, an 8-hour shift somewhere, or go in the garden like you used to. You do these things on your own accord, so to speak. So if you're not getting 8 hours sleep in the night, take some in the day. Get some rest in the day. In terms of natural things that can help, though, and not only for senior people, but for even younger people, there are things like magnesium, zinc, melatonin, and these are natural substances. Our body produces these things. There's a wonderful combination of zinc, about 10 to 15 milligrams, magnesium between 200 and 400 milligrams, and melatonin 3 to 5 milligrams. You normally take it like an hour before you want to go to bed. But I said there are other things, a salsa bush that we used to use, you know. I know when my children, you know, were just getting on, you know, my last, my last nerve with the not sleeping thing, I go get my salsa bush from the backyard, okay? And, you know, those are things that work. And I'm going to talk about some of the natural remedies that can help us as well, too. I know it's mental health, but there are a lot of things that can help us naturally, yes. And that's okay. That's a good question. Like I said, everything, I think what we have to realize in life, everything don't work the same way for everyone. There's no magic formula, especially with sleep. Because the truth of the matter is we have different human activities. We burn different amounts of energy in our work, and we work on different shifts. Because unfortunately, somebody has to be working at 2 o'clock in the morning. If the current comes off, who's going to put back on the electricity? It means that out of necessity, some people develop different patterns of sleeping. And I found, for example, when I was in medical school, I used to play baseball and things like that. And, you know, you're young, you're fit, you have energy. You go sometimes play dominoes whole night and that kind of thing. But what I found personally is that the afternoon siesta that we used to have from about 2 to about 4 in the afternoon, after we eat our lunch and that kind of thing, if you're not having hospital duty, you take a little siesta, 2 to 4 in the afternoon. It's not a deep sleep either, or the deepest of sleep. I saw some people practice it with a key in their hands, and when the key drops, usually in around an hour and a half, 2 hours, that's the time when the siesta would end. I find it helps a lot, because it kind of replaces that, gives you that boost of energy if you have to work like the hospital shift at night, rather than just wait until you get back home to sleep. But suffice it to say, if you can get a regular sleeping pattern where you're sleeping in the night, that's better. Because the cooler temperatures in the night, the darkness, all those things are what causes us to sleep, okay, or enhances our sleep. But out of necessity sometimes, some people will have to sleep in the day, depending on how they work. You take countries, for example, like Sweden and those Scandinavian countries, where they have winters where there's 24 hours darkness, or sometimes 24 hours of sunlight. You know, they have night or day becomes nothing, means nothing for them. So sometimes they have to like have these dark curtains to block out the sun. And they find in those times as well too, the suicide rate tends to increase. Because when your circadian rhythm, your sleep pattern is upset, then that can cause that problem. So I always say, make sure you find your sleep rhythm. That's the important thing. When people come to me and tell me, hey, Doc, I can't sleep, can you give me something to sleep? My first inclination is not to give them a medication. My first inclination is to work with them to find a sleep pattern. And what I realized in life that everyone, the sleep patterns, well, not everyone, but we tend to have different sleep patterns. So it's not a one-size-fits-all, so to speak. Sure. Pardon? It's okay, I can hear you.
Do you think the heat makes you sleep more?
It's different for some people, again. For example, I can't sleep unless, well, I say can't sleep. But it's difficult for me to sleep without my feet covered. Even in the middle of the day, in the hottest sun in Antigua, and I don't have AC in my house, and I don't like fans, so I only depend on my windows for ventilation. My wife uses a fan, but I don't. Okay? I still have to, even in the middle of the day, have at least my feet covered. I tend to sleep with a warmer body temperature. That's one of the reasons why I'm married, okay?
The reason why I ask that is because I find that when I come to Antigua, I get zapped.
And you sleep more.
When I say zapped, sometimes my body can't move at all.
Well, the heat does take your energy to some extent. But for me, it's a bit different. And it works both ways. Even in the day, if you're playing sports, so me, when it's hot, that's when my body reacts better, when it's very hot, as people who want it to be cooler. But when I come to sleep as well, too, a warmer temperature helps me, okay? My wife and my daughter, my last daughter, they can't sleep unless they have the fan spinning at 1,000,000 miles per hour and another fan right in their face. And so a fan above, a fan next to their side. Me, I'm the opposite. Sometimes me and my wife fight about this because I love to sleep when it's warmer. So it's just each person. Suffice to say, most persons probably sleep when it's cool because, again, the chemicals in your body, the melatonin is produced in your body when it's cooler, when it's darker. So most people sleep better that way. But some people, like myself, we just like the warmth when we sleep. But suffice it to say, the question is correct. The heat, of course, takes a lot of energy from you because it takes, water, hydration. And as a result of that dehydration, your body will feel tired, more tired. So it's very important to make sure that if you live somewhere outside the Caribbean or somewhere outside where you have, cooler temperatures, when you go to some place where there's a warm temperature, increase your water intake. Because that will help to replace some of that, that energy and lethargy that you'll have.
Dr. Simon, I just walked in here when you're deliberating on one of my pet concerns. I have a habit. I don't know if it's a bad habit or a good habit.
What's the habit?
As soon as I am finished eating, especially the midday time, I have to take a siesta, whether for 10, 15, 20 minutes. I must sleep. In my car, I just lay back and sleep as soon as I'm finished eating. Sometimes I go to sleep, I just fall asleep when food is still in my lap, if I'm in my car. Sleeping over the food.
Look here. If you don't mind me asking, how old are you?
Many years.
and you told me that number the other day, but I can't.
I know that.
But it's okay. The reason I'm saying this, look here. The habits that we have, okay, the habits that we develop is about maintaining our health. And maintaining our health even as we grow older. I know you're a man of many years, but you look younger than half the people in here, myself included. It means then, if it works for you, don't throw it out. Look here. If you watch, National Geographic or these animal science videos or documentaries, you see the lion runs after whatever animal he's going to kill. And then they eat that animal, and the next thing they go to and sleep. They say the best time to kill a lion is when he's have eaten, because he has a full belly. It's something natural. When you eat, it takes a lot of energy to digest the food, especially if it's, heavy food. It means some of that energy is going to come from your brain. That blood that normally flows to your brain going to go to your stomach. That's why fasting is important. That's why the Bible tells us to pray and fast. Because when you fast, your mind is clearer. because you don't need, you don't have all that blood going to the stomach. It's going to the brain to clear your mind. That's what fasting is about. Not necessarily some spirit coming into your head somewhere, some mumble-jumble spirit. It's the Spirit of God we're communicating with. So, if that's your habit, that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. I can tell you, for example, me personally, I have problems sometimes driving in the day. Okay? Again, the heat, I believe it's the heat, because whatever makes me hot sometimes makes me sleep. Unless I'm somewhere moving. If I'm outside walking and running, so the heat doesn't bother me. But if I'm driving, and a person who doesn't love AC, I will tend to get very tired. If it's a night, for whatever reason, gets cooler, I can drive 1,000,000 miles. Okay? It's just how my body works. Okay?
So what do you think, Doc? I think is a bad habit again to take phenobarbital and all those things overnight to make you sleep?
Repeat that, sorry?
Is it a good thing to take tablets in the night to make you sleep?
I try to avoid giving people medication for sleeping. If somebody has a mental health issue, and a lot of patients I treat, they have mental health issues, and sleep becomes very critical for them. Sometimes they take a medication that will cause them not to sleep. Some of the medication, their mental health medication. So sometimes I will tend to maybe break my protocol a little bit and give them medication. However, I try to avoid giving people medication as much as possible.
What about Sousa Bush?
Well, I mentioned that already before you came in.
Oh, you have already?
Yeah.
Okay, fine, well, fine.
Yeah.
Is it good or bad?
Sousa Bush
That's right.
is natural.
Natural.
And,
Okay.
and like I said, if you have to defer to some kind of medication, I prefer something that's natural, okay? That's not going to have all the side effects of the commercial medication. Because you have to remember, most medication that are commercially produced, especially for mental health issues, they are meant to be somewhat addictive and are addictive, okay? For example, let's take even things like, you heard of omeprazole? The one that you take for your stomach and things like that? There was a survey that was done about 18 years ago, 17 years ago, thousands of doctors in the United States, and they asked them medication they would not take. The list, they ended up with about 8 medications on the list that doctors would not say they would not take. And there were other medications, but the top 8. And the very first one, or one of the top ones, was omeprazole. Okay? Those are pills that we take when we have stomach issue, not necessarily things like ranitidine, which is an acid neutralizer. Omeprazole are a group of medication that actually blocks your stomach from producing acid. But what happens? It has an addictive property because it blocks the acid from your stomach from producing acid. But we need acid, for example, when we have to digest proteins. I know Antigua people love your fried chicken and your even beans, which are protein. You need acid. When we go in primary school, they take pepsin, protein, polypeptides, and the acid makes that whole thing goes, the hydrochloric acid in your stomach. So what happens is that it will ease the stomach issues for the moment, but then it causes it to happen again. Because when it blocks the acid, then your body can't digest the food properly. The stomach issue reflux starts again. But it eases the pain, eases the acid, and then it has a vicious cycle like that. Okay? So I'm saying that to say this. The people who manufacture these medications, they know that the medications are addictive. And that's why I try to avoid prescribing certain medication and most medications if I don't have to. When I prescribe, if I teach my medical students that the first job a doctor has is to teach patients not to take medication. If medication becomes necessary, it can be, and that's okay. But first and foremost, we have to teach our patients to live healthy. And living healthy, funny enough, is not just saying we're doing this or doing that. It's a whole sphere of what is man and what is woman, or what is people, what is child. Okay? You might sleep, you might get enough sleep, but you don't exercise. Okay, when I say exercise, you don't have any physical activity. You might have all the physical things going. You eat healthy, you lift weights, you have nice muscles, but your spiritual connection to God is in the floor. Okay? So all those things have to balance in order to create a healthy person. Okay? Move on to the next point. Cultivate a consistent prayer life, and reading of the scripture. When I produce this, when I say this in front of people who don't know and understand God, they say, Dr. Simon, what that has to do with health? I thought you're a man of science. But I keep saying this is the science that we need to know, the science of the Bible. In order to guard our mental health, we have to teach our children, and we have to do it and teach our children that prayer, consistent prayer, what the Bible tells us about effective, fervent prayer of a righteous man. So it's not just mumble something when you're in trouble, okay? Or when you can't get your way out. Like my daughter say, you know, Daddy, I prayed before the exam. That's why I did so well. And she did her common entrance exam this year. She said, Daddy, that's why I did so well. And I prayed before the exam. Okay, I leave her, you know. But it's not about praying before an exam, okay? It's about consistent, effective, fervent prayer, okay? Daily, reading our scriptures and connection with prayer. Because, as I said before, the Bible has almost everything we need to guard our mental health. For example, 1 Peter 5:7 tells us, cast your anxiety on him, cast your cares on God, for he cares for you. Okay? What else do we need to know? Lay your burden on me. My burden is easy and my yoke is light. So we have to have that connection with God daily in order to help guard our mental health. Next one I want to go on, number 3, is to nurture positive social connections. Nurture positive social connections. I spoke to a group of young people the other day, and I said to them, you know, old people always say you're known by your company. And if I use the word old and anyone's offended, I'm very sorry. It's just that in my household, we just, you know, we're very much unapologetic in terms of when we speak the truth. So, I said to them, old people will say to me, my grandmother will say, you're known by your company. And I'm sure there's something that we have all heard. You're known by your companions. Show me your companions and I'll show you who you are. Now, I know it's a popular statement, and I know there's truth to it to some extent. But I don't necessarily ever tell people, especially young people, just shun people who might not have the character that you think you want to have. And listen to me carefully. In life, you're either a leader or a follower. Okay? You're either a leader or a follower. And I say to young people, know who you are. If you're a leader, then you can lead your companions to Christ, can't you? Okay? If you're a follower, they may lead you astray. Okay? So it's very important, if you're a leader, and all young people are different, there's some who are leaders. So I told those who are leaders, maintain that leadership quality you have. You know, I have a niece named Jerry. She was named after me, so maybe that's why she's so stubborn, because I am. And going back to me, my mom once beat me, and when she was beating me, she told me, someone said, Mom, what are you beating me for? She said, she's beating herself out of me. Because my mom is very stubborn too. No, it's okay. It worked. Okay? And I'm not telling you to beat your children if that's not your means of punishment. Okay? It's okay. There are many different means of punishing children or disciplining our children. But as Jerry grew up, my niece, and her mother always say, how she's stubborn, how she's stubborn, how she's stubborn. I say, don't beat the stubbornness out of her, because that's not what you want to take from her. Okay? You want to make sure you train her in the nurture and admonition of the Lord. Teach her to do the right. Train her to follow God. Because that stubbornness that she has, that's what's going to keep her when the devil tries to get her. Okay? When others try to lead her astray, that is what's going to get her. That's going to keep her in the faith. The fact that she has determined in her heart that she's going to follow the right path. And I said, know who you are. It's very important for us to know who we are. And observe your children. Observe who is the leader. Observe who is the follower. And nurture that in your children. Because we can't avoid interaction with people in the world. We cannot avoid it. Unless we do like the Amish people who live by themselves and keep away from the English. Unless we live like those people, which I'm going to tell you honest truth, maybe it's another discussion, but those people are some of the best people in the world, okay? Because one thing with them, they look out for each other. Amish mother or father dies, the children don't starve. The children don't have to wonder who's going to parent them, okay? But for another discussion. But the point I'm trying to make, unless we're not Amish, we have to interact with people in the world. And we have to find that balance in interaction. So it's not about just not keeping company with people who are of the world. Okay? Because we're going to have to interact with people, some of our workplaces, you know. But we have to know what we believe and what we're going to stand for and what we're not going to compromise on. And that's why I started, when I said earlier today, be careful who comes into your church to speak. Because if they're not someone who can tell you, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy, and the Sabbath day is one of the best antidote for mental health problems, you should not have them speaking in your church. Okay? At least not from your pulpit, because truth has to be spoken from here. Okay, the next one, especially for young people, engage in sports and physical activity. Engage in sports and physical activity. It's not just about winning at a sport. It's the camaraderie, it's the connection that you form with people. I remember I went to Seventh-day Adventist school, and Clarita will know this. I went to Seventh-day Adventist school from grades 3 until grade 7. At the time, we had a grade 7, okay? And I tell people all the time, I hope they get back that grade 7, because the grade 7 was the most important class I ever. That prepared me for secondary school so much. Sometimes when I was in secondary school, because I went to us in secondary school, and sometimes when I was in secondary school, I wonder if the other children did not go to school, okay? And I'm not saying this because I'm bragging or anything like that. But what I learned in grade 7 from Miss Caesar was a grade 7 teacher at Adventist school. That grade 7 that they've taken out because everybody wants to be the first to finish school, and we want our children to finish school at 15 and 16 and be the youngest to finish school. Trust me, the extra year made a huge difference, okay? But I'm saying that to say this, is that at Adventist school we didn't participate in government activities, Ministry of Education activities. For example, we didn't do science quiz and top of the form. I think they're doing that now, if I'm not mistaken, and debate and sports and these kind of things. And I think that we lost a lot by not doing that. And I think we have to trust our children enough that when they go on the sports field, even amongst the worldly children, or the children that go into the government school, we have to trust our children enough that we have taught them well enough that they can be the positive influence and not the other way around. And if we're not confident of that, it means then that we're not doing a good enough job. Okay? When I went to Austin Secondary School, I was able to participate in sports. I played different sports with the school. I did top of the form and debate and all these kind of things, science quiz. And the connection that I formed with people from the other schools helped me so much in my life. It helps you both physically and mentally. And so I want to say that to us, and you know, I don't know if anybody here is an educator or connected with the school, but it's important in our schools to have our children participate in sports and in the different activities that science quiz and these kind of things that the spelling bee that the government organizes, the ministry organizes. What we need to teach our children, though, is that you play fair, you play hard, but play fair. And the most important thing is not just to win at all costs. And we can influence, show empathy. For example, I saw something where they were playing volleyball, and Brazil was playing against Japan, I think it was, or some other country. And a member of the Japanese team had an injury. And the coaches came on, and she was walking with her arms over their shoulder, in the way they usually do when they get injured. And the opposing player from Brazil just went, push him aside and lift her up and take her off. These are women. Just lift her up and took her off the court. Okay? And I'm saying, that's what we need to teach our children. Even when you're sportsmanship, even when you're playing against somebody, even when you're competing against someone, even at school. Okay, you know, sometimes at school, you know, our children can get very competitive because we tell them, oh, you have to come first in class. So the teacher tells you something that she didn't tell the rest of the class as yet. And instead of you sharing with the rest of the class, you keep it to yourself. We have to teach our children, hey, yes, it's okay if you're first, but it's not being first at any cost. You have to be altruistic. You have to help your brothers and sisters who are not as good as you in your class. And that's something I take pride in when I was in school. I mean, I used to find the students that I know are struggling, and those are the students I sit with, those are the students I work with, those are the students I nudge when I'm in class to help them in their school. And it helps you as well because you have to know your stuff. Funny enough, you know, school, again, can be our life in general. We have to take our lessons from life. And I want us, when we think of mental health, to think that every lesson is a lesson that we can take to make something positive of. I often have a philosophy that there's no bad experience in life. The only bad experience is the one you don't learn from. Okay? The only bad experience is the one you don't learn from. Other than when you're dead and you can't learn anything else after that, everything that happens in life makes sure you learn something from it. For example, when I was going also in secondary school, we didn't have a physics teacher for a lot of Form 4. And we didn't have a biology teacher for most of Form 4 either. What I did, I went home, read the books, learned the stuff, and went and taught my class. So I taught physics and biology, okay, in 4th form. We had another student, when we were in 5th form, we had a math teacher, but she didn't sometimes come to the class. And one of the guys, he was very good at math, and he taught the rest of the class math, okay? And I'm saying that to say this. Any experience that you have in life, anything that happens, okay? You don't have $1 to buy a bread, then it might force you to actually plant some pumpkin and use pumpkin flour to make your bread, okay? And I'm going to just digress a little bit, because we have come up now in a system, again, and it hurt our mental health. Sometimes we go into Epicurean or to the other shops around Antigua, and because we want to show off to somebody, we shop in the section where you see all the different flags with the foods from the different countries or wherever, to show somebody that we have some money, okay? To show off to the Joneses, or to keep up with the Jones. Any Jones in here, by the way? And that is something that destroys our mental health. Because what has happened over years in Antigua, we have gotten away from the soil. Okay? We have gotten away from the soil. And now we're eating foods and we don't know where this food come from, number one, because sometimes the packaging, we can't even read the language on the package. Okay? And I'm presently the president of Bureau of Standards, well, the chairman for the Bureau of Standards committee. And sometimes when I walk into a supermarket, I look at the stuff and say, hey, this is a language I don't understand. Okay? It's not even Spanish or French or Dutch that a few people around here might understand. It's probably Russian or Turkish or some language like that. Okay? And I say to people, let us recognize when we don't have the $1 to buy the bread, let us decide to plant something. Plant sweet potatoes. Okay? Sweet potato cheaper than the flour to make the bread, and it's much healthy for you. Okay? It might take a little work, yes, but let's learn to do things with our hands. Teach our children to do things with their hands. Sometimes my son and I have this fight because he thinks he's going to be this big entrepreneur. He's going to make a lot of money, and he's going to become rich. Although he says he wants to become rich so he can help people. All well and good. But I said, Dijon, learn to do things with your hands. Because if you don't, somebody's going to rob you blindly one of these days.
Question, Dr. Simon. If you're a diabetic, it's okay for you to still consume sweet potatoes?
Believe it or not, sweet potatoes have a lower glycemic index than white potato. Okay? White potato is more starch. And starch, again, from your basic chemistry, gets converted to sugar, glucose in your body. In fact, starch is made of glucose. Sweet potatoes, the sweetness of sweet potato is not from sugar or from what we call sugar. Some of it is sugar, yes, natural sugars. But it's really the minerals in the sweet potatoes that makes it sweet. Plus, it has more fiber, non-starch fiber, that causes us to absorb the excess sugar. So it's like when you eat sugar cane, you know, sugar cane that you cut in your backyard, okay? When you eat that, even diabetics can eat, especially type 2 diabetics, they can eat sugar cane because a lot of it, the sugar gets absorbed from the fiber in the sugar, in the cane. However, if you eat the same amount of sugar, you know, refined sugar, then that becomes dangerous because there's nothing there absorbing that sugar. In fact, refined sugar is one of the most dangerous things to both your physical and mental health. As I mentioned earlier, when you eat a lot of sugar, the reason why you feel sleepy because a lot of energy has to go from your brain to your stomach or to burn that sugar, to digest that sugar. And most sugar foods are energy-less. They say carbohydrates give you energy, but that sugar that you eat in the biscuits and the snacks, they very much destroy your immune system because blood has to come from all over your body to digest that food, okay? And it also destroys your mental health because sugar is probably the most addictive substance you can take. I remember when I worked at Crossroads, some of my patients would tell me, Doc, the first thing I got addicted to was to sugar. And I can tell you, if you go around Antigua and do a survey, you'll find more Antiguans addicted to sugar than anything else. That's why nowadays in almost any foods you eat, whether it be ketchup, whether it be hot dogs, anything you're going to eat nowadays, they have high fructose corn syrup. Because the people who manufacture those things know that sugar is addictive. But what it does, when something is addictive, it zaps your mental energy. Because you think about it, you think about getting it. Sometimes you see some people, any shop they pass, they stop. If they're driving from town, they shop in town, but if they're driving from town to, let's say, Old Road, any shop they pass on the way, they stop and buy something. They buy a biscuit here, they buy something there, and it's because of that addiction, that sugar addiction. So be very mindful about sugar. But natural things like your fruits, even the sweetest fruits, mangoes, they're safe for you. As I said in Liberty Church, the mangoes don't cause diabetes. Now, if you sit down and eat 10 mangoes at one time, like I do sometimes, okay? That's gluttony, okay? I'm going to tell the truth. I sometimes eat 10 mangoes at one time. But you see me? I run it off, okay? I walk it and run it off. But just be mindful that you're not overdoing. But mangoes don't cause you diabetes. The sugar in mangoes is natural. They're just very easy in your body, okay? And there's also people telling you, oh, fruits, you should have eaten fruits and all these kind of things. The original diet from Eden was a diet of fruits, okay? That's our original diet. And grains and nuts and stuff, they're still fruits. Just a different type of fruits, okay? But fruits are meant to be eaten. Number 5, set boundaries and manage inputs. Set boundaries and manage inputs. And the reason why I put those two terms together, we tend to look at digestion as just about physical food, okay? But what we feed our minds with is just as important as what we feed our bodies with. And maybe to some extent, maybe more important. I'm going to give you an example. And don't laugh. When I used to work at Clearview Hospital, I was the director of Clearview Hospital for a while, the psychiatric hospital, where people used to call Crazy House, same place. By the way, I was the one who proposed the name Clearview. So that nice name, you see, Clearview, that was my doing. When I used to go up to see the patients in convalescence, an area called convalescence, they had a Bible. And every time I went, the Bible looked smaller. So one day I opened the Bible and I realized that pages were missing out the Bible. So I said, what are you all doing with the Bible? One guy told me that they pull the leaves out the Bible, roll them up, and smoke it. So I said to them, well, God told us to digest his word, but I don't know if he meant it so literally. Okay? But I say that to say this. What you feed your minds on is important as what you feed your body on, or the physical body on. Why? There are times when you're going to find yourself in a situation where you can hardly even think. Sometimes you're driving and something happens, and you might get to find it, like I found myself in a tight spot last night, overtaking somebody coming from the other side, and not have proper light on their vehicle, so I didn't see that I was driving into someone as opposed to overtaking someone. And you couldn't think. Well, I couldn't think in that moment. But I think God took the wheel. But the point I'm trying to make with this, though, is that sometimes you get angry. And when you get angry, you can't think. Somebody does something and you get angry. And you just want to knock their head off. Okay? Or you become very sad. And you can't think either because you're thinking so much. There's so many thoughts in your head that there's no clear thought. Now, what I have learned over the years, what you feed your mind on daily, constantly, is what's going to come true when you can't think. Remember the Bible tells us, don't worry about, when you call in front of the councils, don't worry about what to say. Because God's going to put the words in you to say. But those words can only come in you if you have been studying God's word. Okay? And what I find, whatever you feed your mind on, when you can't think, that's what's going to happen. And that's why in Antigua nowadays, we hear people stabbing people for the simplest little things. I happen to know the brothers a brother who killed his other brother. I used to work with their mom. And these are two brothers, grew up in the same house. One stabbed one over some little foolishness, something that even means nothing. Okay? And the reason why I'm saying this is because if you feed your mind on impure thoughts, okay, That's the picture that comes in your brain. Okay? When you think, that is what you're going to think about. The picture comes into your brain, that's what you're going to think about. Okay? That's what you're going to ruminate on. So I love, for example, somebody said in the introduction, I love cricket. So, you know, I focus a lot on cricket because I love cricket. So often, when I'm doing something, a cricket analogy comes into my head. Now, when you make your decisions, you're going to make your decisions based on the abundance of your thoughts. Remember I said that those thoughts are coming from what you put into your brain, the things that you see, the movies you watch, the books you read, the people you talk to. Those are the thoughts. Those are the picture. It comes into your brain, you think about it. You make your decision based on the abundance of your thoughts. From your thoughts, your actions. So, my thoughts, my decisions, my actions. And from your actions, the consequences. So there's a system. The picture, physical, mental picture, the books you read, the movies you watch, the words that you produce, the songs you listen to. That's the picture. The thoughts coming from that picture, the decision coming from your thoughts, your actions coming from your decisions, and the consequences coming from your actions. If we want to be healthy, and we want to preserve our mental health, we have to teach our children, and we ourselves, we have to focus on positive, God-fearing, uplifting things. You can't expect to watch a movie with negativity, okay? The violence and the illicit sex and all these kind of things. And I'm saying that because you're adult, that maybe in your sexual life is going to make a difference to you. However, lots of times, and I'm not even talking about the picture in these movies, sometimes it's the implicit thoughts, the adultery, normalizing premarital sex, those kind of things. If that's what we're focusing on, then there's no question, and especially if we allow our children to see these things, because I tell my wife all the time, yes, they might watch a Lifetime movies and they're not maybe violent all the time, although I think those Lifetime movies are worse than, But the implications of those movies where there's never ever a whole family, there's always the father is going to cheat and then this one going to come and kill the wife or try to kill the wife and all these kind of things. If you focus on those things, after a while, you bring that into your marriage, you bring it into your house. Because you're always going to think when your husband phones ring and there's a woman on the line, or that's his side woman, okay? Or the man going to think when his wife phones rings and she talks to a man, that's her side man, okay? We have to be careful about these things we put in our heads because then our actions, our decisions, everything going to stem from that. So be careful of the things you put in your head.
We have a question from online. What about menopause and mental health?
Good question. Again, menopause is a natural thing. If you didn't have menopause, then all of us would be like Sarah and having children when we're 90 years old. Okay? Well, all the women at least. Okay? So God instituted menopause when you don't have hormones anymore so you can produce children. All your eggs are gone. The eggs, because you're born with your eggs. The woman is born with her eggs. Okay? And for the first 50 years of your life, in most cases, those eggs are shed from the womb, from the ovary, and come down. If they're fertilized, you have a baby. If they're not fertilized, that's your menstruation. Okay? What has happened over the years? We have been told that menopause is unnatural, that menopause is a medical issue. Menopause is not a medical issue. Yes, there's some people that have problems with menstruation and menopause, and those are medical issues. But the act itself, the event itself, is not a medical issue. It's no more medical than the fact that when your child is 1 year old, you're going to grow to be 2 years old. Okay? But we have been told now that everything that happens is a medical issue nowadays. So you were 49, having your period. You became 50, 51, you don't have your period anymore. Somebody tell you it's a medical issue, so you have to have hormone replacement. Or the hot flash is going to kill you and whatever. No. I'm not saying the hot flashes are not there. But there's a reason why in some countries, pardon? Yeah, well, pulse surge. And they're there. But the reason why in some countries there are women who have less issues with menopause than some. For example, in a lot of African, sub-Saharan African countries, the women don't have this big problem with menopause in terms of the hot flashes and all these kind of things. Why? Because they have not been programmed by the Western thought. Okay? Same thing with menstruation. I tell my wife, don't put fear in my children when it comes to their menstruation. And then my wife says, oh, you can't understand whatever. I say, when you're not at home and my child was in her first stage of menstruation, I'm the one who talked her through it and helped her through it. But then you come and fill the girl in all kinds of things in her head to say, oh, when you're menstruating, you can't go to school, or you might be in pain, or you... I said, nah, don't tell my children that. Menstruation is a normal, natural thing. In other words, we have to be able to maintain that mental sanity about anything that happens to us in life. It happens in men as well too, you know, when they start to have erectile dysfunction, okay? Well, not really menopause, but when you get to a certain age in life, you produce less male hormones. So it means that your sexual prowess and so going to be less. You have to learn when you get to that stage to adjust to it. Okay?
An understanding. We know it's not a medical issue, but it is a problem as far as we have it. Menopause is something common. But the issue of menopause is making the understanding that it does exist. And how do we teach our mates, vice versa, that this thing does exist? And where does the patience come in, or where does the knowledge come in of how we can understand each other so that we don't end up when you're married for 65 years in a divorce because of menopause?
And that's why I'm saying, let's not make it a medical issue. It's a social issue, okay? It's a biological social issue or socio-biological issue because, of course, men and women, when they get married, they have sex. And menopause changes that to some extent. Although some women, when they, after menopause, they're more sexually inclined because they know they can't have babies anymore, okay? So, but I'm saying, and it goes back again to what I call education, because I keep saying, when we tell our children that when you leave secondary school, you have at least 5 subjects, including English and maths, and that's going to prepare you for the world of work and the world of life. That's lies we're telling to our children. What you just mentioned, what you just spoke about, is something that we need to teach appropriately, age appropriate, as we go along in life. To let children know they're going to go through different stages in their life. Prepare them for those stages in their life. So when you have your children, and even your adult children, you as an adult parent to adult children, you're teaching them that as well too when they get to those stages in their life. But you see, we don't really talk about these kind of things as a matter of course. It's always a special event when we talk about these things. These are things we should be talking about so that when we get to that event, it's not a problem. The same way, I tell people all the time, you know, we give people degrees for all sorts of things. You give degrees to doctors because you think that their work is so important. You give degrees to lawyers because you think their work is so important, and degrees to engineers and whoever. And yeah, to build a building like this is important. You don't want the rafters dropping or hit you on your head. However, we should be giving degrees to parents or for parenting, because none of us know how to parent. We're not born knowing how to parent, and we have to learn how to do it. I thought I was a good parent until just the other day when my 11-year-old daughter telling me, Daddy, I don't care. I'm telling her something, but she's 12 now, and she telling me, Daddy, I don't care. I never expect my child would tell me something like that. And the first inclination, boy, this child rude. I mean, what's wrong with you? As old people would say, well, you're smelling yourself. But then I had to take a step back and say, what will lead her to this point? What I didn't do that get her to this point? And it's a scary thought. But we have to learn to parent. And I hope that the church, and I see you is doing something like that at University of West Indies in Antigua here. They have a parenting class. It's not really a degree program, a diploma program, I think, with it. And that's what it is, parenting, teaching us to parents. But I'm saying, in the church, we who have the knowledge of God and the Word of God, we should be now having parenting class. We shouldn't have our young parents learning on the way. when they have their children, we should be having all young parents in parenting class, especially when they get married, before they even have children. Bring them in church and have sessions of parenting so we can know how to parent our children, because it's a huge problem. And that's part of it, teaching about the different stages you're going to go through life, teaching men that this is what happens to a woman's body, teaching women this is what happens to a man's body and to a man's mind when that happens to his body, to a woman's mind when this happens to her body, and how can we work together so that our marriages doesn't fail. You know, shame. You're married for 40 years, 50 years, and then getting divorced because sex changes. Look here, when my grandparents were married, because my grandfather died after 63 years of marriage. When it was their 60th anniversary, we had a called a mock wedding for them. Because somebody found their marriage certificate and realized they were married for 60 years and decided to have a little wedding for them. And they were as happy and sprightly as when they got married how many years ago, okay? My grandma was so fussy about her dress and her face and something. And I hear she tell my grandfather, because there's a girl, Nazmin, her name was Nazmin, that used to help him around the house. Here my grandmother tell my grandfather, oh, I think I don't see you looking at Nazmin. You know, they still have that love for each other. When he was in the hospital, had his hip surgery, of course, his wife, she couldn't come because of her, you know, her stage at that time. When you ask, grandfather, how are you doing? First thing he asks you how Mavis is doing. He didn't care to tell you how he was doing, because as far as he's concerned, he's okay. Anybody that comes to the hospital, how Mavis is doing, tell her not to cry, tell her I'm okay. Because that was him, that was them. And I saw them at 63 years of marriage. You see that connection and that bonding and that love. That even when he died, because he died right next to her, on the bed next to her. He was 94 years old, she was 90 at the time. And when they not wanted to tell her that he died, she told me, think I'm stupid? I know, because every night I'm next to him, the warmth of his body is there. When I feel a cold, I know that he has passed away. And she died about 2 years after, and I think she just missed him. Okay? She died at 92 years old, you know, after he died. And I'm just saying that to say this. We should not let these kind of things, because we have made them medical issues, then the husband going to say, oh, get yourself fixed. Go to the doctor, get the hormones, get the medication to fix your head. As opposed to us working it out together. This is what mental health is about. Human interaction. Okay? I'm going to try to go a little bit quickly. You have a question?
Yes, we have 2 more questions. If someone is experiencing an irregular period for an extended, is it normal, for someone to experience irregular periods for an extended number of years or no periods at all? And we have another question, it's quite similar, so I'm just going to read it as well. Is it normal for a teenager to have a menstrual cycle twice a month? And what are some natural remedies that we could use?
Unless I'm not mistaken, because I thought I was supposed to speak on mental health.
No,
so
yes, you're
it was health in general?
Yes, it was healthy eating and natural remedies.
Okay, sorry about that then. Okay, because I'm really focused on mental health, but that's okay, that's okay. Menstrual health is something that affects a lot of women. For example, you have something called dysmenorrhea, where a lot of women will have a lot of pain and things like that at the time of their menstruation. Now, I'm not a gynecologist, and I know the gynecologists sometimes recommend that women take some hormones to regulate their period and things like that. So if you have an issue with your period in terms of it not being regular, okay, sometimes the doctors recommend that you take hormones to regulate that. Again, there's good points for and against. Hormones can be used for birth control. However, we have to understand as well, anytime we introduce something into our bodies that above and beyond what our body produces, then it can cause problems as well. So for women, especially for those who smoke, and I hope nobody in here smokes cigarettes, using hormones to regulate your period sometimes can cause, can cause deep vein thrombosis, okay? You get blood clots in your feet or in your legs. So I will always try to say as well too, there are some natural remedies that can help. I don't know all of them, and I don't want to just read on the top of my head, and I'm sorry if I misinterpret the topic for this afternoon. I was really focused on mental health. However, there are some natural remedies, and I can come back at some point in time and talk about them. because I use certain things with my patients. Again, it works along with what they have, so I don't want to just tell you go take this or take that, because it might not necessarily be what this person is looking for. But I promise you, I will get the time and come back and we can always talk about that, okay? But suffice it to say, be mindful that, again, be careful when we over-medicalize things that are natural, okay? A menstruation is natural and normal, but it's not the same for every woman. And when we over-medicalize it, and doctors will tell you, if you're not menstruating 28 days, every 28 days or every things like that, then something is wrong. And I keep saying, for each woman, it might be different. And what happens sometimes, we want to make every woman the same, to have they have the period every 28 days. So we get on the hormones to regulate that period. And it might not be what their body is saying. Their body might be saying something different. And we have to respect that, okay? That's why it's important for every woman to know her body. Speak. Don't be afraid to talk to your children about their menstruation. Don't be afraid to talk to your children about sexuality, okay? Because what happens, they will grow up now with the idea, when things happen to their bodies, they will know what's going on. When we don't talk to them about their sexuality now, they tend to just take the world kind of biological perspective where everyone should have a period every 28 days and you should bleed for 5 days to 7 days. And if you bleed longer than that, it's abnormal and all these kind of things. We have to be very careful that we're not, getting our children into this mental space where as soon as their menstruation is a bit different from the month before, then they start to go crazy over it. We have to be careful of, mindful of that. Any other questions? One of the things I want to focus on then, as I go along, and even as I focus on mental health, it will still help with our physical health, is the use of, funny enough, natural remedies, okay? Which I know that's what we want to talk about. Now, there's a whole school of thought about biblical health, biblical remedies. And I tend to, even if I don't know the science, sometimes behind everything that I do. And we're not going to know the science behind everything we do because, believe it or not, anybody here is diabetic? Pre-diabetic? One of the medications they give for diabetes is something called metformin, okay? Doctors don't even know how metformin really works, okay? We don't know the full mechanism of how metformin works. And the reason I'm saying this, because when they give you a medication and they tell you, oh, why are you playing around with the bush, with bush doctors, and we have real medicine here, I'm just going to tell you, sometimes they don't really know how they work. For some patients, you get good results, some patients you don't, okay? So the reason I'm saying this is that it's not everything we're going to know the science works. But even if we don't know the science works, especially when there's traditional evidence and biblical evidence, we can hold on to it. I'm going to give you an example. My father was what you'll call, to some extent, a bush doctor, if you want to put it that way, okay? Even though he's a fisherman, he used to mix these different plants. When he goes to the beach, he finds things like jogaman. He mixes it with nunu and different plants and fever grass and stuff like that. And I know people as far as Old Road used to come to Liberta to get stuff that my father mixed, okay? I learned some of those. That's not me singing. I learned some of those things from him, okay? And I did not always know the science behind them, but I saw it worked, okay? The Bible tells us about the olive oil, right? In the temple rituals and things like that, the oil that we use is olive oil. In fact, the Bible even told us when the priest was supposed to make up this chemical to put in the incense, the Bible even told us that nobody else should make this thing. This is a formula you only use in the temple. The priests who gave authority to do it. Nobody else should be making up these things to burn no incense or the incense than the one that I have here. But we know about the importance of olive oil in the temple rituals, and we know that people eat olive oil, use other olive oil in that area of the world. And as I grew up and I studied more about the olive oil, I realized that you can heat olive oil to almost any temperature, the extra virgin olive oil, and it doesn't convert to trans fats. So I always kind of defer to things that I learned from the Bible. And so for me now, yes, it might be a bit more expensive. I don't use other oils anyway. But it might be a bit more expensive, but the only oil I use nowadays is olive oil. Okay? And I deliberately look for extra virgin olive oil because of the properties that it has. Yes.
Yes, I know that olive oil is good, but what about somebody who is allergic to the olive oil?
Well, if you're allergic to it,
what would you suggest to use outside of that?
and good question. One of the problems we have with allergies, again, we have trained our bodies the wrong way. Okay? Now, I'm sure all of us grew up at some point in time drinking cow's milk. Well, somebody my age would have drunk cow's milk. Now, and it's something I learned recently. I always used to tell people we should not be drinking cow's milk. Okay? When I say cow's milk, I'm not talking about milk fresh from the cow. I'm talking about any form of cow's milk, whether it's in a store, anywhere. Okay? I learned a bit differently now that there's nothing necessarily wrong. Let me not say there's not necessarily wrong, but there's not something inherently wrong with animals' milk. What has happened is that the cows that we have now are commercially engineered. The crossbreeding and stuff. And they're fed hormones and antibiotics and all sorts of things. They're not necessarily farm cows that are range cows. They're actually factory cows. As a reason, especially in the United States, anything that comes to the United States in terms of cow's milk is very dangerous. Now, I learned now that the cows that they have in place like New Zealand and even European countries, Holland and stuff, they're a bit different. They don't have all that kind of, how do they put it? All this kind of engineering to those cows. So they tend to what they call the A2 cows, okay? Actually have a name for it. And those cows now, the milk that they produce, our body can actually digest it because we have the necessary enzyme. So when the Bible says we're going to feast on milk and honey, I don't know in heaven if we're going to really milk cows. And I can tell you that maybe the word milk in the Bible is not always just about animal milk, because we know how sometimes translation goes. But for the people at the time when God told them to move from Egypt to Israel, he expected them that they're going to use milk, whether from the goats or whatever animals they have. I think they had a lot of goats, more than, let's say, cows like the Egyptian had. So they would think. The point I'm trying to make with this, a lot of things that we have eaten when we were small, again, these formulas that we have that are based on cow's milk, especially the commercially produced in the United States, is that cause us now to develop allergies. And as a result, we have allergies to all sorts of things that we should not have allergies to. Okay? And the reason I'm making this long statement about it, because if we eat properly, especially in the early stages of our life, for example, if you have a baby from 0 to 5, 6 months, you give them nothing but the mother's milk. They're seldom going to have allergies. And they're seldom going to develop bad eating habits. Okay? And we see it all the time. They're going to be less obese as well because of that, the fact that they're given their mother's milk from age 0 to at least 4 months, but ideally to 6 months, nothing else. Sometimes the only thing they say should give is maybe water, a little water if it's hot like in the Caribbean, nothing else. No fruit juice, no formula, nothing from age 0 to 4, okay? Now to answer your question, if you're allergic to olive oil, I find coconut oil again, and this is research that I've done. Coconut oil doesn't form trans fat either. It has what we call medium chain fatty acids, and these medium chain fatty acids do not produce saturated fats. So the coconut oil is something very good as well, okay? Again, don't overdo it anything. Everything in moderation. I like when we used to have the term health and temperance, because when we spoke about health and temperance, it gave us the idea that we have to do things in moderation. So yes, it's important to study a Bible, but you have to work to make a living. So you can't say, I'm going to study my Bible 10 hours in the day and don't work to feed my family, okay? Important to pray, but I can't say I'm going to lock myself in my room every day and pray for 10 hours while my wife and children starve. So we have to have balance in life. Speaking of coconut, since, we'll get to your question in a while, but speaking of coconut, since, it was about natural remedies and stuff, the coconut is a very good food in a lot of different ways. Whether you drink the young jelly water that has a lot of potassium and magnesium and things like that to help build bones and muscles, heart health, or you eat the young jelly fruit or the ripe coconut fruit, it has a lot of good properties for us. And again, these are simple things that we sometimes throw away or don't pay attention to. Sometimes I see people cut the coconut, drink the jelly water, and throw away the rest of the jelly meat. That's a waste, okay? We should be eating that as well too. In fact, if you want to see me happy, let me get a piece of coconut and a piece of wheat bread. Yes, I eat my bread with bananas and coconut, okay? I don't need no peanut butter. I don't need your peanut butter with your saturated fats in your peanut butter. I don't need your butter. I don't need your cheese, okay? Give me a banana and a piece of bread and I'm good. And I'm good to go. Castor oil have a lot of uses. Castor oil can be used to help muscle pains, especially what we call virgin castor oil. Again, be careful with refined stuff. One of the problems that have hurt us physically and mentally is refined things, refined foods, okay? Things that look white and nice. You remember time in Antigua, and those of us who are my age at least can remember when Antigua used to produce sugar. And we used to have what we call the black sugar. And then we used to cuss and say, oh, the sugar dirty. Because when you mix your beverage, you leave the little things at the bottom. And then we say, oh, well, let's go to get the sugar from Barbados and St. Kitts. That's nice and clean. We don't know how foolish we were. Because the Antigua black sugar that we were throwing away, that was the real sugar you should be using. Okay? So, to answer your question with castor oil, every castor oil is not the same. Try to get something that's natural. Okay? You see that heavy castor oil, that's the one that's good for you. Less refined. That's the one that helps to your muscles, your back pain, your knee pains. I find it works well for knee. We make a poultice sometimes, or we kind of do a wrap with the castor oil. You warm it sometimes, and that helps a lot. Okay? See the hand here? It's all right, I can hear you. Oh, online? Okay.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
My question is, why is it that usually if your pressure is elevated, the first thing that they do, they put you on pressure pills? Mm-hmm. Because the reason why I'm asking that, 17 years ago, I had her, and I fell sick after having her, and my pressure was high, and they constantly giving me the pressure pill, and I've been back and forth to hospital. I went to different doctor. One doctor said that he had seen something on my EKG, and I've been back in the hospital again and been to a next doctor, and he checked to see if my thyroid and other organ was functioning properly, but he did not see anything. But I should say, a few months later, I went to Dr. Benjamin and I blacked out in his office, and he asked me if I had drank any tea. I had my tea in my hand, so he told me to drink it. He then came and sound me and told me that I was having congestive heart failure. So he sent me to the hospital, and I was there in the hospital for the entire day, and I started to swell. From my foot come up, all the way up.
Get all the breath and stuff?
I could not eat, I could not pee, I could not poo. And the same afternoon, she had taken ill, so both of us was in the hospital. She had bronchitis, so she was admitted to the children's ward. I was in O'Reilly.
How old is your daughter, sorry?
She's gonna be 17. Now, they're giving you all this medication and they're not explaining, you understand me? My cousin told me not to get hooked on the pressure pill because it destroys your kidneys in the long run. I've been to Johnson's Point Clinic, and the doctor gave me some medication, and something in I constantly have this thing coming in my mind, so to read the prescription. When I finally read it, it has so much side effect. I went back to her and to the doctor, and she told me that I have to take it for the rest of my life, you understand? And I got the prescription, but I threw away the whole thing. So now I want to know, is there anything natural that can help with your pressure problem?
Let me ask you a question. Because that would have been 17 years ago, right?
17.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Can you say that? So 17 years ago. Were you hypertensive before that?
Not that I know of.
Not that you know of.
It was during the pregnancy.
So
I had.
in those 17 years, have a doctor explained to you, ever told you could exercise?
One.
Okay, one, okay? Or did they put you on an exercise program? Did they spell out to you to say, okay, you need to do, let's say, half an hour of exercise per day for 5 days a week?
No.
Did they tell you about what to eat to prevent your pressure from going up high?
No salty food.
Okay, no salty food, good. Did they tell you of any natural thing you can use to help take down your pressure?
No.
You see, and that's the problem I have, even as a doctor who graduated from a medical school, a regular medical school, and I'm the dean of a medical school as well, okay? I still have a problem with the way that medicine is being taught and how medicine is practiced. Because look here, if you have hypertension, and it seems like you developed the hypertension because of the pregnancy, something we call preeclampsia or eclampsia. It seems like you developed the hypertension because of the pregnancy, okay? It might be that. Now, it means then that before I might need to put your medication in the interim to get the pressure down, because we know, especially if you're pregnant with the high pressure, it can be detrimental to both you and your baby, okay, before birth. So I can understand if a doctor gives you something to get the pressure down in the short term. But in the long term, there's so many things that you could have done that could have taken your blood pressure down, okay? You could have started in terms of what they told you in terms of diet, and not just not to eat things with salt or eat a lot of salt, but they can tell you what you can eat as well. Use things that has potassium salt. For example, avocados have a lot of potassium, help to lower your blood pressure. Kiwis, and then you have to go to kiwis. We can talk about fruits that right here. Even things bananas, okay? That's one thing. Secondly, exercising. I sometimes write a prescription, okay? Take my prescription pad out and write for my patients 45 minutes a day for 5 days a week and give them. I tell them you can take it to the pharmacy if they want to, okay? No, I'm coming to that. Then there's something like neem, okay? This is not mumble jumble. We have the scientific evidence for it. That neem, you know the neem plant?
Yes.
I often tell patients about 5 to 6 leaves, you know, draw it as tea, don't boil it, okay? You boil the water, put the leaves in it, you can keep it for as long as you want to, maybe half an hour, at least half an hour, or you can keep it overnight. You drink that daily, okay? That has shown to lower the blood pressure, all right? And the reason I'm telling you this, even something like coenzyme Q10, a natural enzyme again, coenzyme Q10, about 200 to 300 milligrams a day, lowers your blood pressure. And the reason I'm telling you all this, because each medication that you take have a lot of side effects. Even natural things, if you overdo it, them have side effects. So I don't want people to think that the first thing when you have high blood pressure, because high blood pressure can kill you, is a dangerous disease. Don't play with high blood pressure. It can lead to stroke, okay? It can lead to heart disease, heart attack. But I'm still going to say that there are a lot of things that can happen, that you can do before you take medication for high blood pressure. Stress management. Are you getting enough rest, sleep, which you spoke about earlier? Okay? Are you exercising? Are you spiritually connected to God? Because all those things, when we are not, can lead to high blood pressure. I remember when I was in medical school, young and healthy, playing baseball, basketball, whatever sport we were playing, that one night we were in the emergency room, emergency duty. It was a quiet night, and we started to check each other's blood pressure. When the doctor took my colleague took my blood pressure, my diastolic blood pressure was at like 94. That's a lower blood pressure. Should be no more than about 85. Mine was 94, okay? And I know I've never a person that have any pressure issues. But what was happening, I was not getting enough sleep. I was stressed out because, you know, medical school has its stresses and different things like that. I was under a lot of stress. And I was not eating as healthy as I, you know, should be doing. And all that caused my blood pressure to go up. Now, that was in 1996, 7, so to speak, 20 how many years ago. And I've never, ever taken a blood pressure medication in my life. Never in my life taken a blood pressure medication. Why? Because when I saw that, I knew what was the problem, and I just did the things to reverse the problem. Now, I'm not saying again, if your doctor examines you check you out, do the test, and he thinks that blood pressure medication is necessary, that you should not take blood pressure medication. But I'm going to challenge you and ask you to challenge your doctor, any doctor that you go to. And for anyone who has hypertension, challenge your doctors. Doctor, is there anything I can do before I take medication? Is there anything that will help me to take my blood pressure down before I take medication? Even natural stuff, even natural medication. Is there anything that I can do? And I have a whole list of things you can do in terms of hypertension. I mentioned exercise. I mentioned diet. Eating things that have potassium, your bananas, even potassium salts, iodine salts, the salts that have iodine in it as opposed to just sodium chloride, okay? Getting adequate sleep, okay? Very important. Getting adequate sleep. Not gouging on fast foods. And Antigua seems to have a fast food phenomenon now. It's the KFC, it used to be KFC, okay? No, it's not even the KFC, no. It's every corner going to, there's a shawarma shop, okay? And it's the burger and fries. There's the fries and whatever. And they tell you, oh, the chicken salad. And the chicken salad is really strips of chicken with a little lettuce. That's not a salad, okay? Well, it's a salad technically, but it's not really a salad, okay? And I'm keep saying, if we learn to eat healthy, you see the cassie that grow around our house, the cactus cassie? You see the spinach in our backyard that can give you calcium? So when women are coming and telling me that their bones feel weak and whatever, because of course women tend to need more calcium than men, I say, are you using the spinach in your backyard, okay? 3-4 times a week. Those are kind of things that are going to help us to keep healthy. And if you do those things, you can lower your blood pressure before taking medication. And if you need medication, I would say go natural first. The neem formulation is there. They have the commercial products of it as well too. I tend to tell my patients, don't mess with the commercial products as yet. Use the natural things, and then we can move to that. Yeah.
No,
Okay.
I was asking, anytime I eat bread, I usually feel bloated. So I'm wondering what is wrong with the bread.
Why eat white bread?
Yes.
Throw away the white bread. Anybody here like me, when they grew up, used to use white flour to make glue? Let me just give a little story quickly. The reason why white flour can make glue, when you add water to it, it clumps up, right? And becomes sticky. And if you stick a piece of paper on that wall with white flour glue, it's going to stay there until Jesus comes or you decide to take it off for yourself, okay? The same thing happens in your body when you eat white flour products. As that white flour breaks down, as it goes to your colon, it pulls water from your colon because it takes a lot of water to flush that out your system, okay? And it's not going to get out. So it takes the water from your colon, and then it mixes with that flour, forms polyps in your intestines, okay? In your colon especially, and that's the root of colon cancer and colon polyps, okay? So I'm going to tell you, if when you eat the white bread it makes you feel bloated, God is giving you a message. Tap it the white bread, okay? If my uncle sell you, is my uncle sell you the white bread? You know, Brother Rhodes? That's the bread man. He sell you the bread? From Vance. Yes, my uncle comes down here, yeah. Even if he give you the bread, ask him for the wheat bread. And you know, really and truly, the wheat bread, because even though, and it's funny, you know how things in life are funny. Wheat bread is more expensive than white bread, okay? And any whole grain products is more expensive than white products or refined products. Although, when you put them through the milling process, whether it be wheat, corn, whatever, the whole grain stuff takes less processing. However, the mills are set up to process the food. So, or to process these products, to make them white. So when you have like the whole wheat products, it means then they have to have a special mill for that. So the whole wheat products are more expensive, unfortunately, when they should not be. But I'm going to tell you, if you're going to eat bread, don't eat white bread. It's going to cause, it's very dangerous for you. Pardon? I don't know what exactly called stone bread, but if it's white bread, it's poison. Okay? If it's white bread, it's poison. Okay? Because they mean the flour has been bleached, and then they add other things to it, and what they add to it can be toxic as well too. Okay? Look here. I've been a doctor for 20, how many years? And I know I'm not going to get rich. And I don't even think about it nowadays. I know I'm not going to be rich. And it doesn't matter very much. Because, to tell you the honest truth, I'm looking to move out of medicine. I love art. I love paintings. I love drawings. If that could give me a good living in Antigua, that's what I'll be doing right now. And I think sooner or later I'm going to get into it. But I'm saying that to say this. Again, challenge your doctors. Because if you're going to a doctor weeks after weeks, months after months, year after year, and you started in 2005 with one medication for your blood pressure, and by 2007 you had 2, and by 2009 you had 3, and 2025 you're on 7, it means that the doctor is not worth his salt. Okay? Your body cannot be going so badly that you have to take more medication year after year after year after year. And if that's the case, what is the doctor doing? Okay? If that's the case, you should be in a hospital. So what I'm saying, you have to challenge your doctors. Okay? And it's not necessarily the doctor's fault all the time. Because you go back to the doctor, takes the medication he gives you. The doctor expects the medication to lower your blood pressure, but he hasn't taught you how to take care of your body. And you don't ask him the things I need to do to take care of my body. So you just take the medication, but what else do you do? How long have we heard for years that we should have eaten things with salt? But then we still love our dukana with saltfish, okay? And all that salt, okay? And if we don't taste the salt, then it has no taste, okay? We pop some popcorn, and we douse a pound of salt on the popcorn, okay? Because if you can't taste the salt, it don't have no taste, okay? It's not only salt, the white bread, like my good sister mentioned a while ago. How long have we heard that white bread is not good for us? I'm sure I'm not the first doctor to ever come here and tell you that white bread is not good for you, okay? But we keep eating it. We keep on the social media thing 24/7, sending our children brain crazy, okay? All I'm saying, if you're hypertensive or diabetic, if you don't do the things to change that, the medication alone not going to be good for you. Why? Because the medication might lower your blood pressure. Fine. But what else? The blood pressure reading is only one aspect of your health. So if my blood pressure reading comes normal, that doesn't mean I'm healthy. I could be walking around right now with my blood pressure perfect and in worse health than anyone else here. It means then we have to just manage our health from not just the medication point of view, but a holistic point of view.
Yes, there's a question here. What natural remedies can be used for fatty liver? And if a gallbladder is not working properly, what can be used to correct it without removing it?
Those are 2 good questions, and they're simple enough. For example, my son at 5 years old had gallstones, and I believe he was born with them. He's the only other person I've seen at that age. Well, one other person I've seen at that age with gallstones. He used to complain of abdominal pain and stuff like that. And one time, the school called us. He was in pain. I took him to a friend of mine that did ultrasound. When we checked, he had gallstones, okay? And the same doctor was Cuban, and I know he was studying in the same schools like I did in Cuba. And he said to me, Doc, you know, people say you have to do surgery when you find gallstones and stuff, but your son is 5 years old. Let's do something different. He says to me, a combination of black seed oil, black seed oil, coconut oil, and lemon juice. And we did that thing for about, I think 2 weeks maybe. My son used to come every day. I used to tell him, Dijon, you have to do this thing 3 times a day. And he said, Daddy, no problem. Or 2 or 3 times, I think it was twice a day. He said, Daddy, no problem. And Dijon came in the morning before going to school. We gave him a teaspoon of olive oil or coconut oil. I think we did coconut oil in that instance. But you can use olive oil as well. A teaspoon of black seed oil and the lemon juice. You just mix it in some water with the lemon juice, mix it up, and he drinks it. And Dijon came, at the time he was about 5 years old, but he came religiously every day, morning and evening. After about a week and a half, 2 weeks, I said, Dijon, I'm going to do an ultrasound again. He said, Daddy, it's okay, I don't have to do the ultrasound. I know I'm okay. When we eventually got around to doing the ultrasound, we couldn't find them, the stones anymore. And that's something I've seen worked. It also works for kidney stones as well. The olive oil, black seed oil, with the lemon juice, it seems to help. In terms of fatty liver, combination of vitamin C and vitamin E tends to work. So foods that have a high level of vitamin E, okay, some of your yellow fruits and stuff like that, they tend to work very well in order to, and even the vitamin A foods as well, like carrots and pumpkin and the carotene foods. But I find vitamin E especially. So if you can't get it in the food, sometimes you can use a supplement, vitamin E, about 600 units a day, along with vitamin C. The vitamin C foods are easier because most of our citrus fruits have vitamin C, and that helps with the fatty liver disease. Now, just to explain, fatty liver disease is a condition where there are fat deposits in your liver, and as a result, it can actually cause your liver not to work properly, okay? Eventually destroy your liver, and can lead to even, cirrhosis and cancer and things like that. So it's not the most dangerous thing if it's, mild, but when it gets accumulated, it can be dangerous. But I find the vitamin C and vitamin E helps with the fatty liver disease. Any more questions? Uh-huh. Coconut oil seems to be a good alternative for black seed oil, for certain things, Like with my son, I think I'm trying to remember if it's olive oil we use or coconut oil. I believe it might have been olive oil, but you could have substituted that for coconut oil, because of course olive oil is expensive. But I'm glad you asked that question. And it's an excuse I hear a lot. Not necessarily you're making an excuse, but it's something I hear a lot from my patients. Or Dr. Simon, you say we should eat healthy, we should eat whole grain stuff, we should do this and that. But that's why I know these things are expensive. And I say again, it's because of our Western mentality again. We think we have to go to a health food store, and no shade on my good friend the Williams who have Veggie World. They're Adventist people, they're good people. I go there and get my stuff sometimes. But I keep telling people, grow things in your backyard, okay? And learn about them. My good friend Dr. Humphreys, who the medical council have been giving problems for the past 10 years or more in Antigua, he wrote at least 2 books on natural medicine, okay? I myself have written a lot of papers on natural medicine. In fact, I do a column in the St. Paul's newsletter every week. So I have to write an article tonight for tomorrow morning. Every week I write an article on health. And other times I talk about the natural things that we have. I think the week before I did pineapple, last week was pineapple. The week before that, mango. I did hibiscus, with the hibiscus petals and the sepals, what they use for. And these are things that we find growing around Antigua in the wild, okay? So health food don't have to be expensive. In fact, health food is not expensive, because a lot of things that we call health food in the health food stores are not necessarily healthy for us. They are processed. For example, anybody here vegetarian? Okay, a few hands. I'm going to tell you, if you're a vegetarian, don't. Well, my sister sells them because she runs the Adventist bookstore, but not buy the gluten products in them. Okay? Not buy the gluten products. Not buy them. Sorry for the dialect, but it's the only way we can say it. Don't buy the gluten products. That's substitute or the substitute meat. Okay? If you're not going to eat meat, leave it alone. Okay? Because if you're not going to eat meat, why are you going to eat the shoes? Okay? Why are you going to eat the leather shoes? Okay? That thing clogs up your system, gives you constipation, and make bumps come around your skin. Okay? Because it clogs up your intestine. Same thing that flour does. If you want to get your protein, eat beans. And you can have a lot of different ways of doing beans. Lentils, garbanzo beans, chana, black-eyed peas. And you can stew it, fry it, bake it. There's so many ways you can do it. Okay? Like my wife, she loves the peas patty, lentil peas patty, and she uses olive oil and make a peas patty. So I'm just saying, there are a lot of different ways you can get your health foods from. But going back to that as well too. And I'll get to your question in a while. But get in your backyard, grow the stuff. In my backyard, I have about 20, maybe 30 fruit trees now, 5 pomegranate trees alone, 3 mango trees, guava, sweet tamarind, seaside grape. People say, Dr. Simon, you do all the bush in your yard. I say, it's okay. When the boats from America can't come anymore, I have food in my yard. Okay? During COVID, when my children got some cassava plants from somebody and their potatoes, we were able to put those things on our plate, the things we grow in our backyard. Okay? And you know they're healthy. We're not using any chemicals in them. We use our compost, and that's another thing as well too. Natural living. Natural eating and healthy living is not just about the food you put in your body, but how it's prepared, and even the soil. So when you have your banana peel and your guinea skin and that kind of things and stuff, and you cut up your pumpkin and stuff, compost them. Composting is very easy. Get a drum that has nothing at the bottom, put them in there, then you mix your greens and your browns, so it means you can put your dry grass, when you cut your lawn, put the dry grass in there, use the dead leaves and stuff, and you have nice compost soil, okay? Yes.
What are some natural remedies for acid reflux?
Very good, and that's something I know well, because I suffer from acid reflux, even before I was a doctor. When I used to teach at General Secondary School, I used to have bad acid reflux, and I thought I was going to die. That's how acid reflux, and acid reflux have a very mental health component in this as well too. When people have bad acid reflux, it affects them mentally a lot, okay? One of the first things I tell you, make sure you're eating on time. That's the first thing. So it's not about, again, taking a product to cure anything, and I don't like people to asking me what cures this or what cures that, okay? It's about practice. It's about what you do. So make sure you're eating on time. Make sure you're not eating, wait until you start to feel your belly grumbling and the gas build up to eat, okay? That's the first thing. Secondly, the foods that cause you problems, avoid them. Usually the foods will be like the high greasy foods and the white bread again, my good sister, the white bread, make you feel bloated, so it's probably acid reflux you're having as well too. Be careful with those, okay? Whole grains foods are more, better, for your system. However, know what makes you feel sick and what doesn't, because it might be different for different people. For example, some people say when they eat things with like oranges and stuff like that, lime juice and things like that, it makes their stomach feel sick. For me, it's the opposite. Me, I have a very soft stomach. My wife can eat anything. They can fry anything and eat it. When I eat certain things, it makes my stomach upset. Me, get me a little lime, squeeze it in some water, and that settles my stomach like nobody's business, okay? But for some people, it might cause them harm. So just know what helps you. But in terms of what you can do, in terms of natural products, which everybody wants to hear, things like your, licorice DGL. It's a natural candy, so to speak, that can help your stomach, okay? You have, for example, neem that I spoke about earlier, and I sometimes do a combination of neem, turmeric, garlic, ginger, and I find it helps my stomach a lot. Ginger helps, okay? But the important thing, though, is making sure you're eating on time. The practice of dealing with acid reflux is very important. Well, the tea is like neem, ginger, garlic, turmeric. I missed something, lemongrass, okay? Another thing you can do, if you have bad acid reflux, make sure that you raise the head of your bed, okay? So what I tell people, get some 4-inch blocks and put under the feet for the bed, the top of the bed. So you're sleeping at an angle. 4 or 6, because what happens, acid reflux tends to be worse at night, okay? That's when you're finished eating and you go to sleep and everything tends to come up at night, usually. So it's very important that you sleep with that bed at an angle, okay? Very important. Some other things that will help with acid reflux, exercising. If you're overweight, lose some weight, helps a lot. But again, avoid the foods that can cause acid reflux. And these foods that tend to be refined foods, foods that are rich in saturated fats, foods that are overly heavy. Don't eat late at night as well either. Don't eat no more than 3 hours before going to sleep. So if you're going to sleep at 10, make sure by 7 you're already eaten all you're going to eat. Even with drinking water and drinking anything, make sure 2 hours before you go to sleep you have drunk all your water and drink everything you're going to drink, okay? Because again, that can cause a reflux. So again, acid reflux is not just what I take to get better, is what I can do to get better. Some of the things you can take as well, celery juice, cucumber juice, those are good things that help with your acid reflux as well. or helps to prevent acid reflux. The problem with B12, and people get carried away with B12 as an entity of itself, okay? The problem with B12 and anemia, because I believe the doctor was talking about anemia, right? Because when you don't get enough B12, it leads to something called pernicious anemia. And pernicious anemia comes from the fact that there's something in your body called intrinsic factor. And for that intrinsic factor to work, it has to absorb the B12, okay? And then that prevents you from getting anemia, pernicious anemia. Now, one of the problems we have with that is not because sometimes we don't get enough B12, it's because we destroy the way our body works. And that's why I keep telling people, I don't love to tell people this cures this or that, because it's not just I take this and it cures anything. It's how my body works. Now, when you overcook foods, for example, I see sometimes some people making, use even vegetables, then they're cooking vegetables, and they cook them soft, and then mash them up, okay? Like when you're feeding babies. When you're feeding the babies the puree food, like the first time they eat in heavy food, you mash up the potato and things like that. I see big people doing that. That's dangerous. When we overly make our food digestible or too soft, it prevents our stomach from secreting natural enzymes that it should. So what happens is that we don't chew the food as much because there's nothing to chew. So the enzymes in our mouth are not secreted. Then it gets to our stomach, the enzymes in our stomach are not secreted as much either. The intrinsic factor is not secreted as much, so it doesn't absorb the vitamin B or the vitamin K. And as a result, it destroys our digestive system. And as a result, if you're vegetarian, and vegetarians sometimes, that's a mistake vegetarians make sometimes, they tend to use too much processed foods, the gluten products, or they mash everything, mashed potato because it's vegetable, as opposed to be chewing the food and eating the food. And as a result, you don't produce enough intrinsic factor and you don't absorb enough vitamin B. If you're vegetarian and plan your meals properly, okay, you eat enough proteins from your beans and your lentils and your different protein foods, you eat enough vitamins from your fruits, you get enough minerals, some things like your coconut or your coconut oil or your olive oil, you get enough minerals, enough fats, because that's another thing as well too. Fat is not the enemy. We tend to think fats are the enemy. Fats is not the enemy. The wrong type of fats is the enemy. So if you do that, you can have enough vitamin B12 in your body without necessarily have to just focus on vitamin B12 supplements. However, if when you check that's not being done and your vitamin B12 levels are low, then you might have to take a supplement. Again, it might be better to take an injectable supplement than, let's say, oral supplement if your vitamin B12 is low. But in my experience, for most of the years I've been a doctor, I hardly found any person's vitamin B12 too low. Okay? I find it maybe on the lower end because it's a big range, but I've seldom find it too low, even for vegetarians, even for vegans. So I'm not convinced that the issue is vitamin B12. Okay? I'm not convinced that it's vitamin B12. There are some patients that is low, and if it's low, you have to take the supplements. But I find it's more of the fact of the way that we eat and how we eat and what we're not eating. We're not balancing our diets properly, even as vegans or vegetarians. And if you don't do that, then you're not going to absorb the vitamin B12 that you need. There's a supplement I find work very well. It's called Neurobion Forte, F-O-R-T-E, Neurobion Forte, Neurobion Forte. It has vitamin B12, 6, and 1. And I find it works very well in terms of, you getting vitamin B12. For whatever reason, it seems to absorb well in your body. It works just as, in my humble opinion, it seems to work just as well as giving the injection, okay? So I hope that answers your question. So it's not just, again, trying to find B12. It's about a balanced meal. Suffice it to say, most of the green leafy vegetables you're going to eat, most of the, light vegetables going to have enough B12 for your body. Any questions before we wrap up? If there's more questions, then I'll just take the chance to wrap up. And I'm really sorry that, yeah, go ahead.
I went to a doctor once. I went to a doctor once. He's my good friend. Just like you and I are friends, really. And I told him that one of my best meals were oats, Weetabix, granola, a little bit of milk, and one ripe banana. And when I put all these in the blender, and I get a large glass put together, that is a whole meal for me, can serve me approximately 4 to 5 hours. He said, well, Mr. 𝙤𝙤, you don't have enough roughage in you. I said, Doc, not the roughage, It's the value of all these things put together, which is a meal. Am I right or wrong to have used that system for my own?
You're totally correct. And again, the proof of the pudding is in the eating, okay?
That's right.
Like one time, a patient came to me, well, a friend of mine came to me and said, he's going to bring his mom to me. I said, what's wrong with your mom? He says, nothing. I said, how old is your mom? She's 80 plus. He says, she hasn't seen a doctor for over 5 years and we just think she needs a checkup. So, okay, no problem. She came into the office, asked him to leave, spoke to her a little bit, took her blood pressure, it was okay. I don't remember if it was okay, to be honest with you. And I said to them, the family, that she's okay. I'm going to say that to say this. If somebody's been living for 80 plus years, and the Bible tells us she score and 10, which is 70, right? If you're past 80, and you've been doing something a certain way for long enough, and it's helped, you feel healthy and whatever, who am I as a doctor to tell you that you shouldn't do it?
That's the point. It's a tremendous blend.
And not to say that you probably can't live to 100 years old, but if you're living at 80 and you're healthy, I mean, I'm not going to take that away from you. Another example I can give you, true. There's a lady in Liberta, she died now, Miss Warner. You just know as Miss Warner, S.M. Warner. She lived to be 103 years old. When she was about 102 plus, her daughter called me to come and see her. Now, 103 years old, what are you going to do? If you find cancer, what are you going to do? Okay? If you find she has AIDS, what are you going to do? If you find her pressure high, what are you going to do? Now, this is a lady that takes no medication. Like my great-grandmother who lived to be 105 years old, they don't go to doctors. So what am I going to do? When I went to the house, the lady came out. You remember those crust cheese tin? The big one. She came out with a tin of a crust cheese tin full of rice and chicken. Okay? And I think some peas, rice and peas and chicken. And she ate off all that. After she finished eating it off, I tell the daughter, excuse me, and I sat with Miss Warner because I know Miss Warner well. She used to work with my father, so I know of him since I'm a small boy. And I said, Miss Warner, you okay? She said, yeah, man, Jeremy, good man. And she remembered me, 103 years old, and she still have all her faculties intact. So I told a lie that day. I told the daughter, and I'm going to admit it because when you're up here, you have to tell the truth. I told the daughter her pressure is okay and everything is fine. and that's it. Okay? And say, it's okay, you don't have to pay me. I won't take any money from her anyway. The point I'm making is this. When you are a certain age, I'm not saying you can't live longer. Because if you can live to be 120, you live to be 120. But I'm not going to tell people to do this and do that and change that if it's even working for them. The doctors say they don't have any roughage, but oats have roughage. Oats have fiber. And that's roughage is fiber. So, and Weetabix have fiber as well too. So I don't know what the doctor is telling you. Maybe the doctor didn't pass everything he did. Well, I'm not going to say anything bad about your doctor, but hey. And another thing I'm going to tell you as well too. Doctors don't always know the best in terms of nutrition. I'm going to tell you why. We tend to look at things from a chemical point of view. So if you get enough vitamin A, B, C, D, you get enough protein, carbohydrates, we tend to just tell you that you're okay, regardless of how you get it. Nutrition is important, not just in terms of what you eat, but how you eat and how it's produced. So it's not the same thing eating a mango grown in Antigua in Old Road in your backyard as opposed to one that you get in Miami that grow on a tree where they're putting chemicals next to the tree and spraying insecticides on the leaves and that kind of thing. It's totally different. So I'm just saying, how you eat is as important as what you eat.
Yes, there's another question. Could you kindly speak on the impact of stress and the stress hormone cortisol, please?
Very good. And I'm teaching that in class right now. Cortisol is a hormone, and I don't like the word stress hormone because cortisol is necessary. Cortisol is a necessary hormone. However, under certain conditions, it can be produced in excess. It can be produced in excess, for example, when you take steroid medication. So let's say you have asthma, and the doctor gives you steroid medication to help keep your asthma under control. Then it can increase your cortisol level. You could have a tumor in your, what we call the pituitary gland. That's a gland in your base of your head. And it can cause you to produce too much cortisol hormone. As a result, that can lead to high blood pressure. It can also lead to diabetes because it doesn't control your sugar well and your pressure well when you have high cortisol levels. And some people say it's a stress hormone because when you're under stress, it seems to be producing more quantities as well too. But I just want us to just get carried away with it being a stress hormone because stress is stress. There's nothing wrong with stress. Stress is something that causes a change in our environment. So for example, let's say I'm in this building and the temperature is what? 75 degrees or 80 degrees. If I go out and it's 90 degrees, that's a stress. So the problem is not stress, the problem is how you handle stress. Okay? And if we don't handle stress properly or manage stress properly, then this way our cortisol hormone levels will go bad, and then our sugar will go up and our pressure will go up and things like that. So the problem is not necessarily the stress. When people tell me, oh, live a stress-free life, what's a stress-free life? There's no such thing as a stress-free life. If you're on earth, you're going to have stress. Jesus Christ had stress. You think Jesus Christ didn't have stress? And it's not he we're supposed to live like? There was blood and sweat coming out of his pores in the Garden of Gethsemane. And the Bible stick him with a knife in the Garden of Gethsemane. You mean he had stress? But it's how we handle stress. We handle stress through prayer. And that's the example that Christ gave us in the Garden of Gethsemane. Father, if it was possible, move this cup from me. Nevertheless, not my will, but your will be done. And I'm going to always say, no matter what health message am I going to tell you, if people are going to tell you don't pray and pray is not important in your health, don't listen. I'm going to tell you why. When we pray the prayer of faith, and the true prayer of faith is that God's will be done, okay? That takes stress from us instantly. You know how well it is to know that if you fall asleep tonight and you don't wake up tomorrow morning, are you going to heaven? Of course, not going to heaven right away, but when Jesus comes, you'll be taken back to heaven. You know comfortable it is when you have that feeling? You know how many diseases that prevents, both physical and mental? But the problem is, we have in the Adventist church, and I'm sad to say this, we have put away dedication and study of God's word and God-fearingness, okay, if that's a word, and replaced it with qualification, with man's qualification, okay? So a doctor comes to us and tells us, you need to take, what's the medication name, Zoloft or Paxil to decrease your stress. And we say, yeah, but I'm going to take Zoloft and Paxil to release our stress. When the Bible tells us, go on your knees, okay? When you're on your knees, you're taller than trees, okay? And if we can just lay our burdens on God, that takes so much stress from us. But we have forgotten how to do that. Because we have been listening to the doctors too much. And I'm a doctor, but sometimes y'all need to not listen to me. Okay? Go and read your Bible. Read your Bible for yourself. Teach our children. You know, the best thing we can do for our children and for ourselves in terms of handling stress, and especially pertains to our children, since the AY program, teach them to love and fear God. Teach them to study God's word. Teach them to depend on him. Nothing else you're going to tell them if you don't tell them that is going to matter. Nothing. Okay? You think if doctors can really help you in the long run, that anybody would die? You think any rich person would die? And rich people have died at a young age and die of cancer and AIDS and hypertension and all kinds of things. And don't they have the money that they could pay the doctor 10 times over? And when Beyonce had a baby, she locked off a whole hospital. The whole hospital. The whole wing of the hospital, the whole floor of the hospital. I'm not talking about a small hospital either, just for her to have a baby. They have the money, but they still die. Okay? It means then that we have to learn, when it comes to this whole thing of stress management, the one stress pill, or the best stress pill, is to know that if you fall asleep in Jesus tonight, that you're waking up to glory the next voice you hear. Okay? There's no more greater stress pill than that. And I'm going to emphasize it because we often come to doctors and say, hey, doctor this and doctor that. I'm sorry. It is, and I don't want to put down my profession, because God has given us knowledge to help you. And I do help people. Sometimes I do help people with medication. There are times when you need medication. I'm not going to say no. But I'm still going to emphasize, we have gotten away from our biblical teachings. We have gotten away from, the Bible tells us, the leaves of trees are healing of the nation. Okay? And yes, still sometimes I come to old people tell me, oh, they're feeding the children cornflakes. And if it's one place I know in Antigua that always is synonymous with fruits and vegetables, wife is Old Road. Okay? It's Old Road. I remember sometime ago I got a fruit basket right in this church. And everything was in the fruit basket came from somebody's backyard or somebody's ground. Nothing from a store somewhere in Antigua. I'm saying that to say this. Are we doing the same thing today? So we complain about stress, and we complain about hypertension and diabetes and a heart to crank out. And this will kill me. And everybody now blame COVID for all the heart attack we have in Antigua. But yet still, we're going to the KFC drive-thru. And we're walking into KFC. And if you're my patient, and that's why I tell people I'm not looking patients, because even patient go to me, I see you all in KFC, I'm signing you all off. And they'll tell me going to KFC to buy no salad. There's no salad in KFC. Okay? The salad is poison. And if you found Old Road, shame on you. Like, from some members from the same Old Road church. This same Old Road church here went to Barbados and tell me they're buying mango. When the lady in Barbados tell them the price of the mango, they want to fight with the lady. Say, lady should bang her up, because I left Old Road go Barbados to buy mango. Anyways, I'm just saying that to say this. Folks, everything that we have to keep us healthy is in Antigua. Everything. You have sunshine. Sometimes you have too much. But again, the reason why we don't have enough vitamin D in our system and we have to go to the doctor to get vitamin D injection, because we jump in our cars in the morning, go to work until sunset, come home, or leave work at 4:30, 5 o'clock, come home, and then we don't ever get in the sunshine the whole day. And now that we have all the AC now, it's even worse. Vitamin D not necessary. But funny enough, the biggest deficiency you have in Antigua in terms of vitamins is probably vitamin D. You need to, look here, y'all have the beach over there, right? You know where I learned to swim? You know, they call it Road Beach? Calais Bay. At the time, we didn't call it Calais Bay, we call it Road Beach. This is where I learned to swim. And when I came down to Old Road for the first time, I was surprised to see children, babies swimming. Okay? I mean, I think I learned to swim by the time my father showed me out the boat, and then as a baby, and I learned to swim. But the time I learned to swim consciously was right here. Okay? But do we take our children to the beach now? The white people then pay thousands of dollars to come to Antigua every day to enjoy the sunshine. Now I'm going to tell you, go bake in the sun. Be black enough. But I keep telling people, the reason why God made us like this is for us to go and take the sun, because the sun makes a difference. There's an Adventist facility called Wildwood, I think the name it is, outside of Atlanta in Georgia. I had a patient with multiple sclerosis who I sent there. And she had high blood pressure as well. You know what they did to take her blood pressure down? Every day she had to sit in the sun. No medication. They put her in the sun, and the sun took her blood pressure down. I'm telling us, we have everything on to make us healthy. Sunshine first and foremost. Okay? There's almost nothing healing like sunshine. That's the reason why on the first day God made light. Okay? And there's a duality to light. Even scientists realize that they can't explain light because the sun was made on the fourth day. God made light on the first day. Okay? So even before the sun, there was light. Light. Men love darkness rather than light. That's why we're so sick. We love too much darkness. Okay? We're always in some place hiding and doing something. Okay? Get out in the sunshine where people can see you. Okay? Light, sunshine. Secondly, seawater. Seawater is one of the most healing things there is. When I was the physio for Liberta football team, okay, and now they're not even in Premier, not even second, they're in second division now, okay? When I was with them, I was in Premier. When we finish our exercise, we go on to the beach, okay? Run down to the beach, run down to Pigeon Point, soak in the water, ease the muscles and stuff like that, help the joints. The minerals in seawater, when you get it in your system, like when your baby has cold and flu. When my children have cold and flu, I'm not taking them to no doctor to prescribe no antibiotic. Even when they're babies, I hold them by the, put them under the water, hold them by their legs, everything drain out. You see snot coming out like nobody's business, okay? But then we get fancy. And then we go to Epicurean or Woods Pharmacy and we buy the, what do you call it? Saline solution nasal spray. And squirt it up their nose. Not knowing they add something to it so it can stay in the aerosol form. When we can get the same thing and even better, natural, by sending our children in the seawater. Okay? Teach them to swim. The other thing, we have fruits, natural fruits, that are not contaminated with chemicals. Okay? So you have everything in Antigua. Fruits, naturally, sunshine, seawater. Yes, please.
Yes, this will be the last question for the evening. How can low blood pressure be corrected?
Low blood pressure?
Yes.
Low blood pressure.
Constant low blood pressure be corrected.
Low blood pressure is not a disease. Okay? Low blood pressure is a symptom of something. So if a patient have low blood pressure, and it's causing them to be sick, because you have to remember, some people have naturally low blood pressure. Like my father, who was as tall as I am and bigger than I was, his blood pressure was always like 100/60. That's his blood pressure. So if the pressure is indeed low, the patient will have to check for what's causing it to be low. So it could be fibroids, especially in women. It's often fibroids. Sometimes it could be cancer, causing you to bleed internally. It could be some other form of internal bleeding. It could be some medication that you're taking that's dropping your blood pressure too low. So low blood pressure is not a disease. So if you have low blood pressure, it means that there's something else that's wrong. If it's truly low blood pressure, it means there's something else that's wrong, and the doctor needs to look for what can cause it. So some of the things like I mentioned would be bleeding inside, fibroids, that could drop your blood pressure, medication that you're taking, maybe you're taking some kind of tea, because some people drink tea that can lower their blood pressure and might be taking too much, weight loss pills, some things like that will be lowering your blood pressure.
How do you deal with a person who has low pulse?
A low pulse rate?
Yeah.
Again, low pulse rate is not a disease. It might be something causing a pulse rate to be low. So again, if it's a medication you're taking, that could be the problem. Sometimes doctors put you on medication and medication will make your pulse rate low to protect your heart. Okay? If it's indeed low pulse, again, it could be the same thing I mentioned for low blood pressure. The patient could be bleeding inside. Although that because your pulse will be high, it can make it low as well. So low pulse is not a disease. Low pulse is probably a symptom of something else. Okay? And let me yes. Mango. Mango leaves. But it's still a mango. Mango leaves is one of the best natural remedies for high blood sugar, for diabetes. In fact, in Cuba, raspberry leaf as well too. In fact, in Cuba, there's something called V-mang. V-M-A-N-G, V-mang. It's an extract from the mango. And they used to use it for diabetic patients in Cuba. But I tell people use the mango leaves. How you use it, though, is important. Try to get the young mango leaves. Or if you get the older mango leaves, make sure you boil it. So you get the mango leaves, about 15 mango leaves, 10 to 15 mango leaves, boil it in water. This time you boil the leaves. You just don't dry it. You boil it, you know, let it boil. And after a while, you just leave it there. Leave it on the kitchen counter. When it cools, you drink it. Okay? And you can do that once a day. That helps to take the blood sugar down. And you can add the raspberry leaves to it as well, too. I just take a little, you know, that stalk with the leaves. I pull off that stalk and put it in there. Yeah. It helps. It really helps to lower your blood sugar. You mentioned, huh? Well, yeah, you have to measure it to make sure you get. Cinnamon helps with. I would say cinnamon helps more with cholesterol. Be careful with blood sugar and cinnamon. It doesn't raise the blood sugar, but it might not necessarily lower it by that amount either. For some people, yes, but in my experience with cinnamon, cinnamon helps more your cholesterol. Cinnamon, and maybe because it lowers your cholesterol as well, by association, it can pull sugar from your body, but it mainly works for cholesterol. You asked another question. What was the second question you asked? There's two schools of thought with fasting, okay? Yes and no. Yes, if you're fasting properly, and I don't like to talk about fasting because it has to be individualized, number one. And you have to teach somebody what to do when they fast, okay? Because if you fast too much and the sugar drops too low, then you can crave sugar, and then the rebound makes it worse. So I tell people all the time, if you're going to fast, fast and pray. and keep prayer for sugar fasting for praying. But in terms of a health condition as well, fasting is important too, because I find fasting weekly helps your body. It helps to take that excess sugar out your body and stuff like that. But if you're going to fast to control diabetes, make sure you know what you're doing. And it will take a long time for us to discuss that. But at some point in time, we can do that because it's very individualized when it comes to fasting. But I think fasting can help to make it story short. But just be careful how you're fasting. Okay? You think somebody have a hand in that area as well? No? If no more questions, I'm just going to wrap up then. Just to say, we have all the things that can make us healthy. Sunshine, seawater, the natural fruits, you know, that are not contaminated with chemicals and these kind of things. Yes, to utilize these things. And to make the trifecta a quadrangle and to make it even firmer, make sure we add prayer and Bible study to the mix. Okay? Again, I'm going to emphasize this. Sometimes people say, one time I was on a radio program, and a patient called me and said, well, a person called and said, Dr. Simon, how can you call yourself a scientist and talk about your belief in God? Okay? I believe in God, okay? And I believe that every problem we have, in fact, healing comes from God, okay? Don't make any mistake, healing comes from God. Because even when he tells us the leaves of the tree are for the healing of the nation, he talks about the tree of life in the New Jerusalem. It means then that tree has the power from God, not just any tree that you plant.
So this is the final question for the night. The final question.
I'm okay, no, it's just up to y'all, you know. I can stay whole night and talk. It's just up to y'all when you're all ready to leave.
So what about junk food and the immune system, especially for the children?
Look here, I have this fight every day. Even last Sabbath or 2 Sabbaths ago, they had something at our church for the children, and I keep saying, why is it every time you all give the children a snack, you all give the children junk food? You all do your children a disservice, a great disservice. You know what you all do when you all give your children junk food? So any mothers in here with young children or fathers with young children, this is what you all doing to your children when you give them junk food. You're going to give them a life, what the word I'm looking for? A life of being unhealthy. That's the first thing. Okay? Lifelong ill health. That's the first thing. Because you start them on junk food, you're going to give them cavities. And you're going to have to pay money to the dentist to fix the teeth. Okay? Even as 52 years old, I hardly ever have a cavity. Because my parents were very careful with what I eat. Okay? You're going to let them develop bad habits. So you run the risk of making them addicts. And in my humble experience as an addiction specialist, you're never addict to just one thing. In fact, you have an addictive personality because of habits. You're also going to have them, put them in financial difficulty, okay? Because they're going to have to spend a lot of money in doctor's office to reverse the effects of the bad food. So it means that you're dooming the children to be financially dependent, okay? So heart disease, diabetes, cancer, you're creating that. Most of the times, when you as an adult at 40 years old, 50 years old, 35 years old, get a disease, It started when you're either in the womb or when you're 1 year old. Okay? What we give our children now, we're going to tell on them later. So please, I know it's convenient. I know the little package things is convenient. You know what I used to do? When my wife used to put snacks in my children's lunch kit, and I'm the one that dropping them to school, preschool. In front of the preschool, there used to be a guava tree on a vacant lot. I used to empty the lunch kit, the snack, because they prepare the lunch at the school, but the snacks, tell you bring your snacks, empty the snacks, pick the guavas, tell my daughter or son, when you go in, tell the teacher wash your guava with you at snack time, and eat your guava. Okay? Or, I go in my backyard, we have star fruit, we have tamarind, we have pomegranate. I used to shell them out at night, shell the pomegranate out at night, cut up the star fruit, get some Ziploc bag, say this is your snack for the next day. Healthy foods can be snacks, and healthy food tastes nice. When I wake up in the morning and I go out and can pick a pomegranate off my tree, or get some sweet tamarind, or get a star fruit, that to me is like, my snack. Sugar cane, that's my snack, okay? We have to teach our children that these things are snacks. The junk food is killing us in Antigua. Antigua has some of the worst demographics in terms of health. We have some of the worst obesity problems in the world. We have some of the worst problems in terms of cavities, and funny about it, believe it or not, they did a survey in 1990-something, all over the world, almost every country in the world, to check for cavities in children at 12 years old. The one metric they used was the amount of cavities that you have at 12 years old. The countries that had the least was the West African countries, because at that time in West Africa, in the 80s, 90s, West African children did not eat sweets. They ate only things that were in their, in their garden, so to speak. So they find that West African children were not having cavities. I think in most West African countries, it was like 0.0 something cavity per mouth, if you want to put it that way. Antigua had one of the lowest demographics as well, too, funny enough. In the whole Caribbean, Antigua was the lowest in the Caribbean, and lowest in the Western, one of the lowest in the Western Hemisphere. I can bet you, we shouldn't bet in church, but we shouldn't be betting at all. But if I was a betting person, I can bet you that has changed right now, and changed for the worse. Because we're now feeding our children all these sweet stuff, and these sweet things are what killing our children. They're killing them so many different ways. Please, please, please. Health is simple. And sometimes it pains me that I'm a doctor and have to be dealing with people that have to charge them $150 or whatever, or $200 or whatever, to come to my office for things that if they had done, they wouldn't have to come to see me or any doctor for. And that's bad. But then it's not only me with the $200, but those who are charging you $50,000 or $60,000 for surgery. Okay? I remember one time a patient came to my office and I diagnosed her and diagnosed the problem. She had a pinched nerve. But she didn't believe me. And she kept going around to doctors and they tell her all sorts of things. She went to the United States, Jacoby or some other hospital in the States, got a loan, paid over $50,000. When they sent me back the report, the American doctors always have these long reports, like a 20-page, 30-page report. The last line says pinch nerve, okay? And I gave her that diagnosis of $150. In fact, at that time I was charging $100. That was like when I started a doctor, $100 at that time. Saying that to say this, medicine and health is not difficult, well, health and wellness is not a difficult process, but we have to get it right and get it right early. The Bible says get it right early. Know that if we teach our children the things, then they'll have that ingrained knowledge in them, that as they get older, they don't depart from it. Just like the Bible says, train up a child in the way they should grow. Teach your children to eat well. The little one with small children, teach your children to eat properly. As adults, we can change as well, too. When I became about 7, 8 years old, my mother said, no more white bread in the house. And that's when we started to eat wheat bread. And nowadays, when I eat white bread, it makes me feel sick. It just the taste. Not that it makes me feel, but the taste just tastes like plastic, like rubber, like shoes, okay? And I'm saying, one of the problems that we have why our children crave junk food is that we introduce sugar too early into their diet. So it changes their taste buds. So they now have a sense of sweet. And now they have that sense of sweet. Everything that's natural tastes bad to them. Even fruits. Sometimes our children don't want to eat fruits. And I say, what's up? And then after we insisted when they're small they're going to eat fruits, then sometimes I go out in the morning, the tree don't clean already, okay? Especially a small daughter. She will eat the guavas, the sour guavas, okay? So I'm just going to end by saying thanks very much for inviting me here. And I'm very sorry, I didn't get to see the WhatsApp message because of what happened. My phone had some issue this week, so just the calls I was depending on. So I didn't necessarily see the topic. So sorry if I kind of, because I was really thinking about mental health, but all health ties in, okay? And even with mental health, the natural way of living is what's going to keep us mentally fit as well. So I want to say to the people of Old Road, I still believe this is probably the healthiest church in Antigua, knowing what I know about Old Road. But if I see things changing, I'm going to rag you up on it as well too. Thanks very much.
Good evening, church. On behalf of the AY department, we are extending our heartfelt thanks to Dr. 𝘾𝙤𝙤𝙩 for taking the time to share such insightful and thought-provoking information with us today. Your words were not only informative, but deeply inspiring. We also want to We also want to thank all the participants and everyone who came out to support this afternoon's program. Your presence made a difference, and we are grateful for your continued encouragement and involvement. Thank you, and may we continue to grow and learn and support each other.
And let me just say one thing as well too, because when I say I come home to Old Road, literally and figuratively, because if they know the Browns, they're my family, the Browns of Old Road. The Nicholases right in this church, they're my family. And Mr. Josiah told me some time ago that we have some kind of family connection as well too.
Let's stand for prayer, please. Let's bow our heads. Heavenly Father, we thank you so much for this afternoon session. We thank you for all of the wisdom that was shared today. And we pray, Lord, that you will bless Dr. Simon in a special way. And we thank you so much for using him, not only today, but in his daily life to teach others. We pray, God, that you will bless him, bless his family, bless all of us, Lord, and help us to be diligent in pursuing good health and live the lives that you really want us to live. Please be with each one of us, take us home safely, and help us to have a good evening. We thank you and we give you praise in Jesus' name. Amen.